We're gonna have to do a better job training men in order to protect women from violence.
As a Black woman, and there are things that Black men can offer us, and I think we have to be open, we have to listen, and we have to communicate.
But we do know that that bridge that we talked about between the hospital and my house is in the community.
We miss the opportunity to start to think about how we set those spaces up, and are we having dialogue about what that looks like?
Speaking on violence, how can we best protect Black women from direct and indirect violence?
Well, we're gonna have to do a better job training men in order to protect women from violence, because, and particularly when we're talking about intimate, interpersonal violence, domestic violence, I say intimate, interpersonal violence, because domestic violence suggests that people are living together. And so, but what we know is that there's a great deal of violence that occurs between people who are girlfriends and boyfriends and not necessarily living together. But what the data says, and what the quantitative and qualitative data says, that the highest percentage of individuals who experience intimate interpersonal violence are in fact women. So it's about 95%, 5% men, and that may be a factor of men not wanting to report. But again, the largest percentage is of women. And we know that 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence, and 31% of all women will experience some form of it. We also know that sometimes we have these narrow definitions about violence. And so we think about physical violence.
Yes.
And so that is major. That is absolutely major. And so when you talk, Dr. Hamilton, about some of the deaths that occur, we know that Black women are being killed by their Black male partners, and that women in general are being killed by their partners, their lovers, their husbands. We know that in many cases, we are also experiencing extreme emotional violence, which contributes to the hypertension and stress that you mentioned. And so that too is an issue, as well as financial violence, which contributes to economic insecurity.
That's right.
Women. And so when we think about violence against women, we have to be broad in our outlook to look at the physical violence, to look at the emotional violence, to look at the financial violence that also occurs, that renders women unable to actually realize their full potential.
So I don't feel it's though, like you said, we need to raise men better. Just as much as we look at what's going on with African Americans, it's the country's responsibility to fix what's going on with African Americans, not African Americans' responsibility. The same way, I feel like it's men's responsibility to stand up and lead and to protect the women in society. And so what are the solutions that you recommend that we create or push for to better protect our women? Kind of going back to the question that Terron asked earlier.
So one of the things I think is always interesting is, are we equipping everybody in the equation with the same language, and are we doing it early enough? So most of the time we're missing the proper time to intervene and work and equip. And really a lot of this starts in adolescence, right? And early, honestly, it starts even earlier with some of the messaging, but some of the formal opportunities that we have through like programs and schools and youth groups and churches, we miss the opportunity to start to think about how we set those spaces up, and are we having dialogue about what that looks like and protection. And, a lot of my work was in sexual health and communications and relationships, but that extends to every kind of interaction and relationship. And so are we teaching people how to handle strong emotions? We did a program with young girls who are incarcerated, and the main thing that we focused on is how to handle your emotions, because I can't talk to you about navigating like alcohol, drugs, and sex if we haven't just at the base figured out how to navigate these relationships. So you do that for young people, across the board. And I think early you teach them the words to communicate. Just like we say with kids, use your words. A lot of times we don't have the language to do this. So when we experience this overwhelming emotion, or we experience something that's unsettling, we don't have words for it. And we don't, and as you all have mentioned, we don't have the space to discuss it because they told me not to talk about that. And so creating that space, I know we say that a lot, and I think in research, we know exactly what that means. And I think that translates into, have you said to someone, I'm a space for you to talk about that with? And you may have actually told them, not you personally, right? But it also happens that a lot of times you told them you're not safe because of the way you've talked about things prior. Right? So if you're in a room and you don't even realize you've said something that may shut someone down from saying something else. So as an individual, as a group, have we done things in our spaces that shut down the conversation? Right? So I say, language and communication.
Yeah, Dr. Davis, you make an excellent point, because I was going to say we have to support one another and we have to listen. And I think the thing is, we get so caught up in, I'm a Black woman, I have this, and Black men get so caught up in, I'm a Black man and I have this, but we all have issues that we can support each other and coming to a solution or finding some problems. I think listening to one another, supporting one another. There are things that I can, offer as a Black woman, and there are things that Black men can offer us. And I think we have to be open, we have to listen, and we have to communicate. And I think those are the big things. And we have to be willing to do the work. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick. We're going to have to put the time and the effort, but we just have to listen, communicate, and do the work.
Understand. And we always just say to meet the people where they are and use your sphere of influence. And so in the realm that you're in, you figure out in my position, what am I able to do? And so we go out to churches and we do talks and we do that. And it's Dr. Hamilton talking from Oxford. As much as we love her, I'm still not the NFL players. And so how interesting it would be to have community forums and to actually meet the people where they are with the mobile units and things. We've done that in the past, but it's few and far between. But we do know that that bridge that we talked about between the hospital and my house is in the community. And so similar where we always say we have to just kind of meet the people where they are. And so making a pledge to do that is so important when it comes to everything that we've discussed today.
Absolutely.
I have a question around staying on this on the violence side. Are the violence that's happening in intimate interpersonal relationships, and the violence that's happening to girls at schools that are over policed, and the violence that are happening to them in regards to just in society in general with police brutality, like, are those interconnected or are they different? Do they come from the same biases? Do they come from?
I think one interconnecting factor is something I mentioned earlier, the docility, being docile. Because oftentimes, even within intimate interpersonal violence situations, if males have been raised, socialized to believe you are the man of the house, all decisions have to come through you, you are the head of your household. Sometimes that's interpreted in ways that women aren't to speak. They are to be seen and not heard. They are, in fact, this, even going back to, and I don't want to step on any toes, but, biblical texts that talk about, she's the helpmate. Sometimes that gets misconstrued. And if a woman talks back, then she's not considered docile in that intimate space. And so you have to do something to correct that lack of docility. In a school situation, a young girl gets sassy with the teacher. Teacher tells her you need to do this, and she says, why? Well, that Black girl might get a desk turned over on her, or she didn't pull her, and there, we've had cases like this. And then with police officers, if a woman says, well, no, why are you arresting me? Or why are you asking me for this? Again, there's this notion of you are to be controlled. And when you step outside of this space of control, then I have to respond. So in their intimate interpersonal relationships, if the women are not adhering to this notion of masculinity that they want to be adored, then they will in fact strike out against the women.
I'll wrap things up. Dr. Spence, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Davis, thank you so much for your time. This has been incredibly informative and educational. I know for the three of us standing here and everyone watching. So we really appreciate all of your insight. And a couple of phrases that have really jumped out to me throughout our time together: empowerment, self-esteem, identity. You know, these three key components that we as a society, I think, need to do a much better job of understanding the way that all the topics that we talked about, from education to healthcare to violence and stopping violence, and the way that it impacts Black women in our society. And if we want to build the society we all want, we have to do a better job of understanding those things so that we can all move forward. So thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much.
It's been great with you all.
This was great. Thank you.